4 generations, the Zalari Empire ruled their part of the galaxy without fear. Their fleets were strong, their weapons unmatched, and their arrogance endless. They believed no other race could challenge them. Humans were just a new species, small and noisy, still learning how to build ships that could cross the stars. To the Zalari, Earth was nothing but a small blue dot, weak and harmless. But that belief changed the night their sky went dark. On the moon of Varn, deep scanners began to detect strange signals. The readings were unclear, massive energy, unknown origin, and approaching fast. The watch officers laughed at first, thinking it was just a mistake in the system. One of them joked, maybe humans finally learned how to make a proper ship. Everyone laughed. But the laughter stopped when the readings began to rise. The signal wasn't small, it was growing stronger every second. Captain Ralith, the commander of the Varn defense station, leaned forward in his chair as the screens flickered. "What's the size?" he asked. The sensor officer swallowed hard. "Unknown, sir. It's huge. Too huge. The system can't calculate the scale." The captain frowned. "Run a manual check." The officer nodded, but his hands shook as he typed. When the result appeared, he froze. "Sir, it's bigger than the moon." The room went silent. Only the hum of the monitors filled the air. The captain glared at him. "That's impossible. Check again." The officer checked 3 times. The result didn't change. Something massive, far beyond their imagination, was entering the system. The captain felt a strange chill crawl down his back. "Get me a visual," he ordered. The main screen flickered. For a few seconds, there was only static. Then the stars appeared, and one by one, they vanished. A dark shape covered them, moving slowly across space. It was not round like a planet, nor rough like an asteroid. It was smooth, metallic, and deliberate. It moved with purpose. One of the younger officers whispered, "Is it a ship?" The captain didn't answer. His throat felt dry. The shape grew larger on the screen until it filled every corner of the display. It was a ship. A single ship. And it was bigger than their moon. "Send a transmission," Ralith ordered quickly. "Identify it. Demand to know who they are." The communication team sent out the call, but there was no answer. Only silence. The ship kept moving. It didn't slow, didn't turn, didn't speak. Just drifted closer. Calm, unstoppable. Soon, its shadow fell across their moon. The surface lights dimmed. Power systems flickered. Civilian stations began to panic. Messages flooded in. "Is this an eclipse? What is that thing? Is it human?" The captain's second-in-command, a seasoned officer named Kira, turned to him. "Sir, if that is human-made, then they've built something beyond reason." The captain clenched his fists. "Impossible. Humanity doesn't have this kind of technology. No one does." But deep down, even he didn't believe his own words. The ship finally stopped in orbit. Its black metal hull reflected faint light from the nearby sun. Strange symbols glowed along its side, white lines forming letters that none of the aliens could read. The scanners translated them slowly. "Titanus Prime." The room went completely still. Kira whispered, "It has a name." The captain stepped closer to the screen. "Titanus Prime," he repeated softly. The words sounded heavy, powerful, final. He felt like speaking them was dangerous, as if the ship could hear him. Suddenly, every alarm in the station began to scream. The sensors showed massive energy waves radiating from the ship, but not as a weapon. It was scanning. Every moon, every ship, every signal in the system. The Zalari fleet prepared to respond. Hundreds of smaller ships moved into formation, weapons ready. They sent warning shots across space, brilliant flashes that vanished before touching the human ship's hull. It was like the energy was swallowed by a void. "No effect," reported Kira in disbelief. "Our weapons aren't even reaching it." "Raise shields," Ralith ordered. Prepare for possible retaliation. But the ship didn't attack. It simply hovered there, watching. The silence was worse than any weapon. The entire system felt like it was holding its breath. Reports began arriving from nearby outposts, satellites shutting down, communications cut off, power drains across all grids. The massive ship was controlling the space around it. "This isn't just technology," said one engineer softly. "It's control. It's bending reality." The captain didn't reply. His eyes were fixed on the main display. The camera zoomed in closer on the ship's surface. It was covered with thousands of faint glowing panels, each one bigger than a city. He could see movement on the hull, like lights running in patterns. It wasn't random. It looked like language. Like the ship itself was alive. The captain whispered, "What do you want from us?" But of course, the ship gave no answer. In the deep cold of space, Titanus Prime remained silent, its shadow stretching across the alien moon. On the surface, civilians gathered outside, staring up at the dark sky. They could no longer see their stars, only the faint reflection of the ship's hull covering everything. Children asked their parents what it was. No one could answer. Across the empire, fear began to spread. It was a quiet fear, one that no one wanted to admit. The empire that once believed it ruled the stars was now standing in the dark, powerless before something it couldn't understand. On the command deck, the captain finally spoke, his voice shaking. "Send this message to the High Council. Contact Earth. Immediately." Kira looked at him. "You think this really is human?" Ralith didn't look away from the screen. The black surface of Titanus Prime seemed endless. "I don't know," he said slowly. "But if it is, then we have already lost." The ship moved slightly, just a shift in its angle, and the entire moon trembled as if caught in the gravity of a god. The communication screens flickered again, and for one terrifying second, a human voice came through. Calm, emotionless, powerful. "This is Earth Command," it said. "Do not be afraid. You started this war. We are only here to end it." The transmission ended. The silence returned. And for the first time in history, the Zalari Empire understood what true fear felt like. Long before the shadow of Titanus Prime fell across their moon, the Zalari Empire had believed that war with humans would be easy. They were an old and powerful race, their fleets spread across hundreds of worlds. They had crushed many younger civilizations before, taking their resources and calling it order. When humanity first appeared on the galactic stage, the Zalari saw them as nothing but another species to control. At first, contact was peaceful. Trade began, small agreements were made, and humans sent explorers to learn about other races. But the Zalari looked down on them, mocking their small ships and short lifespans. They called humans the noisy apes of soul. That insult became common across the empire. But humans didn't care. They kept building, learning, growing. They had something the Zalari could never understand: unity through struggle. And when the Zalari attacked, humanity didn't beg, they planned. The war began with a mistake. A Zalari patrol destroyed a small human mining colony on the edge of the neutral zone, claiming it was illegal. Over 5,000 civilians died. The humans protested through the Galactic Council, demanding justice, but the council did nothing. The Zalari were too rich, too powerful, and no one wanted to anger them. When humanity sent a peace envoy, the Zalari humiliated them on live broadcast. The Zalari Emperor laughed as he said, "Humans are a fragile race. They talk of peace because they fear war." That single sentence spread through human space like fire. Within weeks, the United Earth Fleet mobilized. The Zalari thought it was a joke. "Let the monkeys come," they said. "We will crush them like dust." The first battles were brutal. The humans were brave, but their ships were smaller and their weapons weaker. Entire human fleets vanished in the early months of the war. The Zalari took their victory as proof that the galaxy belonged to them. They burned colonies, enslaved survivors, and broadcast every victory across the stars. The Emperor declared, "Earth will kneel within a year." But something strange began to happen. After every defeat, humanity came back stronger. Their ships changed, their weapons improved, and their strategies became unpredictable. They adapted faster than any species the Zalari had ever faced. Still, the Empire believed it was only a matter of time. The humans couldn't win, they were too young, too small. Then, suddenly, humanity went silent. No ships, no transmissions, no movement. For 6 months, the entire Sol system was quiet. Zalari spies reported that Earth had gone dark, as if they had stopped fighting completely. The Emperor laughed. See, they have broken. They hide behind their tiny planet. The Council warned the Emperor to stop the war, but he refused. We are the Zalari, he said proudly. We do not stop for insects. His fleets moved closer to the human border, planning the final invasion. But their scouts began to vanish. Whole squadrons entered human space and never returned. The Empire thought it was just navigation errors or rebels. They sent more fleets, and they vanished too. No wreckage, no signals, nothing. It was as if something enormous had swallowed them whole. The Emperor grew angry. He ordered his top commanders to prepare for a full assault on the Sol system. We will burn their world, he said. But as the fleets prepared, a single transmission arrived across every Zalari communication channel. It came from deep space, and it was human. The voice was calm, almost emotionless. To the Zalari Empire, it said. You began this war. You took our people, destroyed our homes, and laughed at our pain. You wanted to see what humanity can do in war. You will. Then the transmission ended. No one could trace it. The Zalari engineers said it came from multiple points in space at once. A message without a source. A warning without a face. The Emperor dismissed it as human propaganda, but deep down, even he felt uneasy. That night, several Zalari listening posts near the human border went offline. Patrols reported seeing strange flashes in the distance, like stars blinking out. And then, silence. Total silence. For months, nothing more came from human space. No ships, no words, no signals. The Empire grew restless. Some believed the humans were building something, others said they were hiding from extinction. But the Emperor did not care. Let them hide, he said. We will find them when we wish. What no one knew was that humanity had indeed gone quiet, but not from fear. They were building something in the darkness. Something vast, something alive with power. Engineers, scientists, and soldiers from every human colony worked together under one command. Earth had unified in a way no one thought possible. They were not planning to survive the war, they were planning to end it. And when the day came, the galaxy would witness what human silence truly meant. Months later, as the Zalari celebrated another false victory, a strange anomaly appeared in their border space. The readings made no sense. Massive gravitational distortions, energy levels beyond anything known. At first, they thought it was a dying star. But then, from the blackness of folded space, something began to move. Something too large to be real. The Zalari scientists stared at their screens in disbelief. No object can exist at that size, one said. But it did. It was moving, slow, deliberate, unstoppable. That was the first sign of Titanus Prime, though the Zalari didn't know it yet. They had mocked humanity, destroyed their worlds, and thought themselves gods. But soon they would learn that the silence of Earth was not weakness, it was preparation. And when that silence ended, the Zalari would understand what fear truly meant. In the command chamber of the Zalari High Fleet, chaos ruled. Dozens of screens flashed warnings as the unknown object drew closer. No one could believe the readings. Its mass was beyond calculation, its energy output higher than a star. Some thought it was a planet caught in motion, others whispered it was a weapon of the gods. But one thing was clear, it was heading straight for the Zalari capital system. Admiral Sarek, a veteran of 100 wars, stood in disbelief. Increase magnification, he ordered, his voice barely steady. The main display zoomed in, and the image sharpened. The object wasn't a rock or a drifting planet. It was metal, smooth, silver-black metal stretching endlessly in all directions. It moved too perfectly, too steadily. It was a machine. Impossible, one of the officers muttered. No civilization can build something that large. The admiral didn't answer. He could feel the tension pressing on everyone in the room. The ship's surface glowed faintly, like veins of light pulsing under skin. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. Has it sent any signals? Sarek asked. None, came the reply. It's silent. The admiral nodded slowly. Then we make the first move. Prepare the fleet. Across the system, thousands of Zalari warships powered up their weapons. The order was simple: intercept the intruder and destroy it before it reached the capital world. It was the largest fleet the Empire had ever assembled. They called it the Iron Veil, a wall of fire that could crush any enemy. As the ships formed ranks, the massive intruder entered orbit around one of the outer moons. Its movement was graceful, like it was observing rather than attacking. The scanners tried to lock onto its hull, but every attempt failed. The readings came back scrambled, as if the ship's structure bent reality around it. It's distorting our sensors, said the chief engineer. We can't get a full scan. Admiral Sarek stared at the image. It's toying with us. Suddenly, lines of light began to glow brighter across the massive hull. A pattern emerged, symbols and letters that no one recognized. The computers translated them slowly into the common galactic language, Titanus Prime. The name echoed through the control room. A silence followed, heavier than before. The admiral leaned closer to the display. Titanus Prime, he whispered. Is this a ship or a world? A communications officer interrupted, panic in his voice. Admiral, it's scanning us. Every screen lit up red as waves of unknown energy washed over their ships. Defensive positions. Sarek shouted. Shields to maximum. The fleet moved into formation, weapons charged and locked. But Titanus Prime didn't attack. It simply observed. The admiral felt a strange sensation, as if the ship was looking directly into his soul. Open a channel, he said. Let's see if they're willing to talk. The communications team sent a universal message, standard greetings, demands for identification, and a warning to leave Zalari space. No reply. Send it again, Sarek ordered. Make it clear we are ready to fire if they don't respond. The second message vanished into the void. Still no answer. Only silence. Then, suddenly, a low hum filled the air. The sound didn't come from their systems, it came from the ship itself. It was deep, powerful, almost like a heartbeat. The vibrations shook the command deck. What is it doing? Kaler, the tactical officer, shouted. Energy levels rising, fast. Before Sarek could reply, the stars around Titanus Prime seemed to warp. Light itself bent near its hull. The alien moon's orbit shifted slightly, pulled by the ship's gravity. It's affecting planetary motion, screamed one scientist. That thing's mass is rewriting our system physics. The admiral clenched his fists. All ships, prepare to fire. Do it now. The order was sent. Thousands of plasma cannons and missile launchers released their fury. Space lit up with energy and flame. The explosions were magnificent, a storm of destruction aimed at the single ship. But when the light faded, Titanus Prime was untouched. Not a single mark. No damage detected, reported the sensor officer in a broken voice. It absorbed everything. Sarek froze. Absorbed. Yes, sir. The energy just vanished. Like the ship drank it. The hum grew louder. Lights across its surface pulsed rhythmically, like it was awakening. And then, for the first time, a voice echoed through every Zalari system. It wasn't shouted. It was calm, deep, and terrifyingly human. This is Earth Command, it said. We have observed your actions. You will cease hostility. The admiral felt his stomach twist. It was human. After months of silence, the humans had returned. But this was no ordinary fleet. This was something else. Respond. Sarek shouted. Tell them this is Zalari space. Tell them. But before he could finish, the voice returned. You invaded our colonies. You killed our people. You were warned. The signal cut, and the lights on Titanus Prime brightened like a rising sun. Sir, said Kaler quietly, they're charging weapons. The admiral gritted his teeth. All ships, defensive posture. Fire at will. The fleet opened fire again, but their weapons were useless. Beams vanished, missiles disintegrated, and the ship remained still. Then, without warning, Titanus Prime fired one beam. Just one. It was thin and quiet, almost beautiful, a ray of white light that stretched across space like a finger of God. Every Zalari ship it touched disappeared instantly. No explosion, no wreckage. They were simply gone. The fleet of thousands was erased in less than a minute. The light faded, and silence returned. Admiral Sarek stared at the empty space where his armada had been. Dear stars, he whispered. What have they become? Titanus Prime turned slowly, its massive hull glinting in the light of the nearby sun. And in that moment, every surviving Zalari understood one thing. Humanity was no longer fighting for survival. They were demonstrating what fear truly looked like. The battle was over before it truly began. The Zalari fleet, thousands of ships strong, armed with the most advanced technology their empire had ever built, was gone. The space they had once filled was now empty, silent, and cold. Only drifting debris and faint static on the comms remained. Admiral Sarek stood frozen on the bridge of his flagship, unable to move, unable to believe what he had just witnessed. Every ship that had fired upon the human vessel had been erased by a single beam of light. No explosion, no impact, just pure disappearance. It was as if they had never existed. How can that be possible? Whispered one officer. Sarek didn't answer. He couldn't. His mind was struggling to understand how one ship could destroy a fleet larger than any ever assembled by the Zalari. Did anyone survive? He asked quietly. The communications team scanned desperately, but the answer came seconds later, heavy and final. No signals, Admiral. Nothing left. Sarek felt his knees weaken. All that power, he muttered. And they didn't even aim twice. The massive ship, Titanus Prime, floated calmly ahead, its black hull gleaming with strange patterns of light. It didn't move to chase the remaining ships. It didn't finish them. It simply waited, like a silent judge. Admiral, said Kaler, the tactical officer, we're receiving another signal. It's the same voice as before. The bridge fell quiet as the message came through. This is Earth Command. Hostilities will cease immediately. Further aggression will result in termination. The voice was calm, emotionless, and final. There was no threat in its tone. Only certainty. It wasn't a warning, it was a statement of control. Sarek wanted to respond, to argue, to show that the Zalari Empire would not bow. But before he could open his mouth, the massive ship shifted. Slowly, it began to turn toward the Zalari homeworld. It's moving, said the navigator, his voice trembling. Heading for the capital system. Estimate time of arrival? Sarek demanded. 2 standard hours. Send a message to the capital. Sarek shouted. Tell them to evacuate immediately. The crew scrambled to comply, but deep down, Sarek knew it was useless. The Empire's entire population couldn't hide from something like this. The humans had built a ship that moved like a god's hand across the stars. There was no defense, no plan that could stop it. As Titanus Prime glided through space, every outpost and station it passed fell silent. Power grids went offline, communications died, and scanners failed to lock onto its presence. To the Zalari watching from their worlds, it looked as though a new moon was moving through the sky. Dark, immense, and terrifying. On the capital world of Zealer Prime, the skies dimmed as the ship's shadow approached. Civilians filled the streets, staring upward as the stars disappeared behind the giant black shape. Some thought it was an eclipse, others screamed that it was the end of days. The Empire's High Council met in panic, demanding answers. "We must strike again," one of the generals shouted. "They can't be unstoppable." But none of them truly believed his words. Every weapon they had ever created had failed to even scratch the ship's surface. "We are dealing with something beyond comprehension," said another elder. "If this is human technology, then humanity has become something else, something we were never prepared to face." In orbit, the remaining Zalari ships formed a defensive line, blocking the path of Titanus Prime. It was a last stand, hopeless but necessary. Sarek's flagship joined them, weapons armed and shields raised. "We'll hold the line," he said, though even he didn't believe it. The massive ship stopped again, floating silently before the defensive wall. For a long, endless moment, nothing happened. No sound, no signal, only the void staring back. Then, the same deep hum returned, the heartbeat of the ship. The surface lights flared, and a pulse of blue energy spread outward like ripples across water. The Zalari ships tried to move, but their systems failed instantly. Engines shut down, weapons froze, lights went out. Every ship in the fleet was dead, silent, floating metal. The admiral looked around as his own bridge lights dimmed. "What's happening?" an officer cried. "It's disabling everything." Within seconds, all controls were lost. Titanus Prime didn't fire a beam this time. It didn't need to. It simply shut down the entire fleet with a single pulse. The voice returned once more, now echoing across every communication line in the system. "You took from us without mercy. We will return the lesson. You will learn silence." And then the transmission ended. The ship moved forward slowly, passing through the paralyzed Zalari fleet as if it didn't exist. The ships drifted helplessly aside, powerless, their crews trapped inside. As it neared the planet, the energy waves from its hull began to affect the surface. Lights across cities flickered and died. Power plants shut down. Satellites fell from orbit. The entire world went dark beneath the ship's shadow. On the ground, people looked up at the sky in terror. They couldn't see the stars anymore, only the faint outlines of the massive ship blotting out the heavens. It didn't fire. It didn't speak. It only hovered there, watching. In the silence that followed, the Zalari understood something no enemy had ever made them feel before. Humanity wasn't just fighting them. Humanity was judging them. Admiral Sarek sat quietly in the darkened bridge of his dead ship. He looked out at the shadow covering his homeworld and whispered, "They didn't come to destroy us. They came to show us what fear really means." And as Titanus Prime loomed above, unmoving and silent, the Empire began to crumble. Not from war, but from the terror of realizing that against humanity, there was no victory, no escape, and no future. The planet of Zealer Prime had never known true silence before. Its cities were built upon sound, hum, chatter, the endless rhythm of life. But now, all that remained was quiet. The power grids were gone, communication towers dead, and the once bright skyline of the capital had turned into a sea of dark shadows under the looming presence of the human warship. Titanus Prime hovered above the planet, unmoving, its surface alive with faint blue patterns that pulsed like veins of light. The people below watched in horror and awe as the enormous ship blotted out their sun, casting a night that refused to end. Every attempt to reach it had failed. No transmission was answered. No weapon could even lock onto its structure. It was as if the ship existed in a space outside their reality. On the surface, panic spread like wildfire. Some prayed, others screamed for their leaders to act, but even the High Council had fallen silent. In the council chamber, the air was heavy with despair. The elders sat in the dark, the emergency lights barely glowing red. "We have to surrender," one of them whispered, his voice trembling. "We don't even know if they would accept it," replied another. "You saw what they did. They erased our fleet, shut down our world, and they haven't said a single word since. What if this is just the beginning? Admiral Sarek's face appeared on the chamber's backup holoscreen, his expression grim. Counselors, I advise you to issue a full planetary evacuation. If the humans choose to attack, we cannot defend the population. Evacuate to where? The Elder snapped bitterly. They could follow us anywhere. There's nowhere left to run. The Admiral didn't answer. He looked up briefly, eyes reflecting the faint blue light coming through the windows of his bridge. Then we pray they came only to warn. Outside, Titanus Prime shifted slightly. For the first time in hours, the ship moved, not toward the planet, but upward, away from it. The watchers below gasped as the gigantic vessel began to ascend. Hope flickered through the terrified crowds. They're leaving, someone shouted in the streets. Maybe they spared us. But that hope died when the ship stopped again. Slowly, a massive structure began to unfold from its lower hull, a circular array of energy collectors, each glowing brighter than the last. The light intensified, spreading across the clouds, turning night into blinding white. Sarek's heart raced. They're charging something, he muttered. Everyone, brace for impact. The energy field pulsed once, twice, then released. But there was no explosion, no destruction. Instead, the pulse rippled gently across the planet, spreading in a wide, silent wave. For a moment, everything froze. The wind stopped, fires dimmed, and even the oceans calmed. Then the lights returned, not artificial, but natural. The night sky shimmered as if 1,000 stars had been born above Zealer Prime. Data cores reactivated, but their contents had changed. Every military record, every plan, every secret archive of war crimes and conquest had been erased. In their place were images of burned Earth cities, of human corpses, of alien fleets attacking defenseless colonies. The truth had been returned to them, but it wasn't human propaganda. It was their own crime, recorded by their ships, their soldiers, their own cameras. What is this? The counselor whispered in shock as the holograms appeared in front of them. They're showing us our own shame, Sarek said, voice hollow. Across the planet, screens flickered with the same scenes. Soldiers who once believed they fought for honor now saw the faces of the children they had killed. Civilians who cheered for conquest now saw the ruins they had celebrated. The truth spread faster than any weapon could. And the people began to turn on their rulers. Riots erupted in the streets as the population demanded answers, demanded justice. The council was trapped in chaos, unable to control the storm they themselves had created. Above it all, Titanus Prime remained still, its task seemingly complete. Then a final message echoed across every remaining communication channel, a voice calm and cold, speaking in a language every being could understand. You wanted war. You found fear. We do not conquer. We remind. Then silence again. The ship began to rise, slowly vanishing into the upper layers of space until it was nothing more than a distant speck against the black. But the silence it left behind was not peace, it was guilt. Sarek watched from orbit as the world below burned with its own unrest. He knew then that humanity had not come to destroy them, they had come to show them something far worse. They've changed us, he said quietly. Not with fire, but with truth. Weeks passed. The Zalari Empire fractured. Colonies declared independence, fleets deserted, and the once mighty central government collapsed under the weight of its exposed sins. Across the stars, the name humanity became a whispered warning, a reminder that power alone could not hide cruelty forever. Those who had seen Titanus Prime never forgot it. Some called it a god, others a ghost. But for the survivors of Zealer Prime, it became something different, a shadow over their conscience. They rebuilt, but their skies always seemed dimmer. Their songs quieter. For they knew that somewhere out there, humanity watched still, patient and silent, holding the universe accountable. And though the ship was gone, the fear remained, deep, quiet, eternal. Weeks turned into months, but the shadow of Titanus Prime never truly left the Zalari Empire. Its presence lingered in every whisper, every fearful glance toward the night sky. The people of Zealer Prime lived under a new kind of silence, not forced, but born from shame. No one dared to speak of war anymore. The mighty fleets that once roamed the stars proudly now sat in orbit, cold and empty. The Empire had not been destroyed by weapons, but by truth. Yet beyond the ruins of their pride, Admiral Sarek couldn't rest. He spent sleepless nights on the bridge of his damaged flagship, staring at the stars where Titanus Prime had vanished. There was no signal, no trace, not even a radiation trail. It was as if the ship had dissolved into the void. They could be anywhere, he said to his first officer, Kaler. Maybe even watching us right now. Kaler looked uneasy. Do you think they'll return, Admiral? Sarek didn't answer right away. He had seen enough to know that humanity didn't act without purpose. They didn't come to destroy us, he finally said. They came to deliver a warning. The question is, was it meant for us alone, or for the entire galaxy? On the capital world, the Council tried to rebuild, but unity was gone. Blame spread like infection. Some said the humans had used psychological warfare. Others claimed divine punishment. The truth didn't matter. What mattered was fear. In a desperate attempt to understand their enemy, the Council gathered all surviving data about Earth. What they found was terrifying. According to old records, the humans had been weak, fractured, and technologically behind. No one in the galaxy had seen them as a threat. But then, without warning, they vanished. All communication ceased. Their colonies went silent. For nearly a century, no one had seen or heard from them, until Titanus Prime appeared. The Council's scientists were baffled. How could such a primitive species build something beyond comprehension? It's impossible, one scientist argued. Their energy output defies every known law of physics. Their ship's mass alone should collapse under its own gravity. But Sarek interrupted him. And yet it didn't. It flew. It destroyed our fleet. It turned our world into silence. The scientist fell quiet. What if, Sarek continued, humanity didn't just build a ship, they became it? The room fell still. You mean they merged with their technology? Yes, Sarek said. They may not be the same kind of beings anymore. They've evolved beyond flesh and fear. The thought chilled everyone in the room. If humanity had transcended into something more, something part machine, part consciousness, then they were no longer just another race. They were something higher, something that saw all others as children playing with fire. Days later, the Council ordered a long-range probe to follow the trajectory Titanus Prime had taken. It was a desperate mission, one few expected to succeed. The probe launched silently into space, carrying the last hope of understanding what humanity had become. Weeks passed. Then months. Finally, one night, the signal returned. Sarek was on the command bridge when the data began streaming in. We've got something. Kaler shouted. It's faint, but it's there. The readings showed a trail of exotic particles, unlike anything known. It was a form of energy that seemed alive, constantly shifting, impossible to replicate. Follow it, Sarek ordered. The probe continued deeper into uncharted space, and what it found made everyone on the bridge lean forward in disbelief. There, floating in the darkness, was a message, a structure of light and symbols, suspended between the stars. It wasn't built, it was projected. The message wasn't in words, but in energy patterns. Yet somehow, every being who saw it understood. It was simple. We were like you once. We rose, we fought, we forgot what it meant to feel. But the stars remembered. Do not repeat our sins. Sarek stood motionless, staring at the glowing transmission. It wasn't a threat, it was a confession. Humanity had not only evolved, they had learned the cost of their own power. They were warning others before history repeated itself. They're not gods, Kaler said softly. They're guardians. No, Sarek replied. They're witnesses. The signal ended abruptly, and the projection faded. But its impact was permanent. the Zalari Empire began to change. The military was disbanded. Warship factories were converted into research stations. For the first time in their history, the Zalari looked outward not with greed, but with curiosity. They began to teach the message to their children, not as a legend, but as truth. The humans had shown them fear so they could learn peace. Still, deep within the quiet corners of the empire, not everyone agreed. Some saw humanity's act not as mercy, but as dominance. "They humbled us," said a young commander in secret. "They showed us our weakness. But what if one day, we rise strong again? Would they still show mercy?" The idea of vengeance began to whisper through the stars. Humanity's warning had been powerful, but fear has a way of turning into hatred. And while most of the galaxy remembered the humans as saviors, a few began to see them as tyrants in disguise. Admiral Sarek knew it, too. As he looked at the star map on his bridge, he whispered, "The humans gave us peace, but peace built on fear never lasts." Far away, in the endless dark, something stirred. Titanus Prime was not gone. It watched quietly, unseen, listening to the whispers of rebellion forming among the stars. And as its engines pulsed faintly in the void, a single line echoed across its command core: "Observation continues. Judgment awaits." Humanity had not disappeared. They were waiting for the galaxy to prove whether it had truly learned, or whether it needed to be reminded again. Years passed since the day Titanus Prime darkened the skies of Zealer Prime, yet the memory of that shadow still haunted every star of the former Zalari Empire. The people rebuilt their worlds, but they did so with quiet fear, glancing at the heavens as though the humans might return at any moment. The message humanity had left burned deep in their minds, a warning, a lesson. But lessons fade, and fear, when left to fester, begins to twist. Deep within the outer colonies, far from the watchful eyes of the reformed government, a new movement was rising. They called themselves the Flame Reborn. They believed the humans were not saviors, not teachers, but conquerors who ruled through terror. Their leader, Commander Vareth, was once a fleet officer who had lost everything in the first encounter. He had watched his family's homeworld fall into chaos and silence. To him, humanity's warning was nothing but a humiliation carved into their history. "They made us kneel," Vareth said to his followers, his voice sharp and filled with fury. "They erased our power, our pride, and called it mercy. But no one rules forever, not even them." His followers nodded, eyes burning with vengeance. They had been collecting old war data, forbidden blueprints, and fragments of lost technology. Among their stolen archives was something rare, faint energy readings from Titanus Prime's first strike. With enough time and genius, they believed they could replicate it. Their goal was madness, to build a weapon that could match humanity's power. In secret, they established a base on a dead moon, far beyond the edge of known space. They called it Oblivion's Forge. There, thousands worked in silence, constructing what they believed would be the dawn of a new age, their own version of a Titan-class ship. Meanwhile, Admiral Sarek, now retired, lived in quiet exile on a distant planet. His days were spent watching the stars, haunted by the faces of those who had died under his command. One night, as he observed the sky through his telescope, his communications console beeped weakly. The message was old, coded in military format, but the signature made his blood run cold. It was Vareth. The message was short: "You showed us fear. We will show you defiance." Sarek stared at the screen, his heart sinking. He knew what it meant. Someone was trying to challenge humanity again. "Fools," he whispered. "They'll doom us all." He contacted the new High Council immediately, but his warnings were met with silence. "Admiral," the counselor said, "there are no fleets, no wars. Humanity is long gone. You're chasing ghosts." But Sarek knew better. "They're not gone," he said firmly. "They're waiting. And if these rebels strike, they'll come back. You saw what they did last time. They don't forgive easily." The council ignored him. They believed the threat was imaginary. But far from their peaceful worlds, on the moon of Oblivion's Forge, the rebels succeeded. After years of hidden work, they activated their creation, a monstrous ship built from stolen human designs and alien innovation. It was not as massive as Titanus Prime, but its energy core glowed with the same unnatural light. When the engines roared to life, the moon itself cracked beneath the pressure. Commander Vareth stood on the bridge, staring proudly at his creation. "Behold," he said, "the shadow of vengeance. The first of our kind. The humans will know we are not afraid." The ship launched into the dark, leaving behind a broken moon and a burning hope. The moment it entered hyperspace, a ripple spread across the galaxy, a pulse, faint but unmistakable. And somewhere, far beyond known space, deep in the dark void where even light dared not travel, Titanus Prime awoke. Its systems, dormant for years, began to hum. Blue lines of energy reappeared across its hull, and the silence of the void was broken by the deep, rhythmic pulse of life. The ship's AI, cold and ancient, processed the signal. Human interference detected, unauthorized replication of forbidden technology. Judgment protocol initiated. Across the galaxy, strange events began to occur. Satellites flickered, power grids failed, and distant sensors caught fleeting glimpses of massive gravitational distortions. Humanity was moving again. On Zealer Prime, the sky lit up with red alerts. "Something is coming," the defense monitors reported. "Massive energy spike on the outer rim." Admiral Sarek, who had been watching the stars, felt it before anyone else. He closed his eyes. "They're back." Vareth, aboard the Shadow of Vengeance, laughed as his crew reported the readings. "Let them come," he said. "We are ready." But he was not ready. None of them were. Hours later, a massive shadow appeared at the edge of the system. The crew froze as their sensors struggled to comprehend what they were seeing. Titanus Prime had returned. It was larger, darker, and somehow more alive than before. "Impossible," whispered one of Vareth's officers. "It's been decades. How can it still be?" "Silence," Vareth snapped, though his own voice shook. "They think we fear them. They're wrong." He ordered the ship's weapons to charge. Massive energy cannons glowed, targeting the incoming behemoth. "Fire," he commanded. The blast erupted from the Shadow of Vengeance, tearing through space like a star being born. The impact hit Titanus Prime squarely, but when the light faded, the human ship remained untouched. Not even a scratch. Instead, a single beam of blue light extended from Titanus Prime, scanning the rebel vessel. A deep, mechanical voice filled every comm channel. "You were warned." And then the stars themselves seemed to fade. The space around the rebel ship warped, twisted, and then, silence. The Shadow of Vengeance was gone. No explosion, no wreckage. Just emptiness. Admiral Sarek, watching from afar, lowered his head. "It's starting again," he murmured. "They gave us a warning once. Now they bring judgment." And as Titanus Prime turned slowly toward the center of the galaxy, its engines flaring like miniature suns, one truth became clear: humanity had returned, and this time, they were not coming to teach. They were coming to decide. The galaxy trembled once more as Titanus Prime moved through the void like a god returning to its throne. Every world that had once mocked humanity now watched in terror. Reports poured in across every communication channel, ships vanishing, power grids collapsing, stars themselves dimming for seconds at a time. No one spoke the human's name aloud, as if even uttering it would draw their wrath. Admiral Sarek sat alone in the Old War Observatory, his face lit by the flickering holograms of distress calls from a dozen worlds. "It's happening again," he whispered. "They tried to challenge the storm." The destruction of Vareth's ship had sent a shockwave through the stars. The energy readings were off every scale, and yet there had been no explosion, no debris, just silence. It was as if the humans had erased matter itself. The council finally called for Sarek, begging him to advise them. He arrived in the dimly lit chamber where the new leaders stood in fear. "Admiral," one of them stammered, "you knew them better than anyone. What do they want?" Sarek's eyes, tired and hollow, lifted to meet theirs. "They don't want war," he said quietly. "They want understanding. But you've forgotten their warning. Someone tried to recreate their power, and now humanity reminds us why we should never reach for what we cannot control. The room fell into uneasy silence. Can we stop them? Another asked. Sarek shook his head. You can't stop a storm by shouting at it. You can only survive it. Far beyond their world, Titanus Prime reached the outer edge of the Zalari system. It slowed, its engines humming softly, and then it opened. Massive panels unfolded across its hull, forming rings of light that stretched for kilometers. From within the rings, dozens of smaller ships emerged, each sleek, black, and shaped like fragments of the same living metal. Humanity had not returned as one, they had returned as many. The fleet of the Titans was awake. Across the galaxy, every sensor picked up the same signal, a faint pulse of energy accompanied by a short, simple transmission. Observation complete. Verdict imminent. The words spread faster than light, reaching every corner of known space. Empires, traders, miners, and explorers all froze in disbelief. Some tried to flee their systems, others powered down in surrender, but no one could hide. Humanity was not seeking vengeance, they were enforcing balance. On Zealer Prime, the sky darkened once again as Titanus Prime appeared, larger than before, its glowing veins of blue light stretching across its entire hull like rivers of fire. Crowds filled the streets, trembling as the shadow swallowed the daylight. The council sent one last desperate message: we surrender. We will disarm all fleets. We will destroy all weapons. Please, spare us. For a long moment, there was no reply. Then a calm, synthetic voice filled the air, echoing in every city, every comm channel, and every living mind. Your surrender was accepted long ago. Yet your kind still built weapons in the dark. You have learned nothing. The ground trembled as energy waves rippled across the atmosphere. The great cities flickered and shut down. Every weapon factory, every hidden lab, and every military base began to collapse. Not in explosions, but as if the material itself turned to dust. Humanity was not killing. It was cleansing. From orbit, the sight was breathtaking. Entire landscapes glowing and then cooling into calm silence. Admiral Sarek watched from his observatory, eyes filled with tears. They're not destroying us, he said. They're resetting us. The High Council's transmission cut off mid-sentence as the energy wave reached them. When it passed, the entire capital lay quiet. No screams, no destruction, just stillness. Titanus Prime floated above it all, silent and unmoving. Then, as if addressing every world at once, the voice spoke again. This was your second lesson. There will not be a third. The ship turned slowly toward deep space, its fleet following behind. One by one, the smaller vessels folded back into its hull until only the original behemoth remained. It began to ascend, its engines humming with an energy too vast to comprehend. But before it vanished, it released something, a projection of pure light that spread across the galaxy, visible to all who looked to the stars. It was an image of Earth, serene and blue, surrounded by thousands of glimmering lights. And below it, a final message appeared: do not forget who taught you fear. Do not forget why. Then the light faded, and Titanus Prime vanished into the void. In the days that followed, peace returned, but it was not the same peace as before. The people of the Zalari Empire, what was left of it, no longer spoke of conquest or power. They rebuilt, but with reverence. No weapons, no armies. Only knowledge and remembrance. The image of Earth became a sacred symbol, a reminder that even the most powerful civilizations could fall if they lost their humanity. Still, whispers lingered among the stars. Some claimed to have seen flashes of blue light in distant galaxies. Others swore that a faint hum echoed in the emptiness, as if the great ship still watched. Admiral Sarek, old and frail, would often look up at the night sky and listen. You're still out there, aren't you? He'd whisper. Guarding us. Judging us. He died peacefully one night under those same stars, a faint blue glow washing over his home as if answering his final thought. And so, the legend of Titanus Prime became eternal. To some, humanity was a myth. to others, a warning. But to those who truly understood, humanity had never left the galaxy. They had simply ascended beyond it. The stars were their eyes now, and silence their judgment. For as long as the stars burned, the galaxy would remember the day they arrived, the day the aliens finally understood fear.